Hey guys, Geek here, and this is the Nakto Classic. The Classic lives up to its name by being a retro-inspired, no-nonsense design, featuring a powerful 350-watt motor at the rear, along with a long-range 20-mile battery at the front. But you hardly notice these in the frame as they're so well integrated to it, and you'll probably notice things like the cutesy front basket more than anything. If this doesn't seem like my typical style of bike, you're absolutely right, and it's because I let my mother-in-law pick out a bike for me to review. She'll be the one using this most, and I think she picked out a great design for herself. It's very easy to get on and off with the step-through design, low seat height, and comfortable high-rise bars. It's also very practical with the surplus of storage space, including the included front basket, along with the cargo rack at the rear where you can mount a second basket or really whatever you want. So let's get to my unboxing, my initial impressions with the bike, and why I really would love to recommend this bike, but it's got one kind of big problem that has really a somewhat easy fix, or a kind of more complicated Pilot Geek style fix. So let's get to it. The Nakto Classic, as with most online bike purchases, requires some limited assembly. Much of the bike is pre-assembled, requiring final assembly and fitment of just a few components. I lay the bike out on the cardboard and take inventory of all the parts, including the seat, pedals, charger, and included toolkit. The main steps are to install the front wheel, along with adjusting the seat and handlebars to your liking. Once the main parts are together, it's just a few more screws to attach accessories, such as the fenders and headlight. I was surprised to see that the front brakes did not come pre-adjusted, as this is easily the most difficult part of the whole assembly. While the manual provides very good instructions, if you've never done rim brakes before, I highly recommend watching a tutorial or taking it to someone who knows how to properly set this up, as it can be very frustrating and potentially hazardous if set up incorrectly. One thing I was a bit confused by was the lack of the supposedly included basket. I was sure I had checked everything, but sure enough, it was not in the box. Turns out this ships in a second order to prevent damage, so for the time being, I fitted my own wicker basket to the front until I received the proper basket. Overall, the bike looks very stylish and gives off less of a typical e-bike kind of vibe, and much more of a classic cruiser vibe. The color of the bike and the paint are very nice, but on close inspection, there were a few blemishes in the paint and some welds were a little bit uglier than I like to see. Don't get me wrong, they're structurally sound, just a bit blobby. The handlebars and grips are very comfortable, with a leather finish. The, display leaves a bit to be desired though, and is the start of my least favorite parts of the bike. No pedal assist levels or power adjustment to be found here, just LEDs showing charge. On the opposite side of the bars, we find a thumb throttle, which feels cheap but works fine, along with a much nicer 7-speed Shimano shifter controlling the Shimano gear set at the rear. To transfer power from your legs to the gear set, the bike is fitted with unusually short 152mm crank arms. Standard cranks are usually around 170mm, so these shorty cranks let you keep a lower seat height without having to overextend your leg at the top of the pedal stroke. If you've ever been put off by mystery hip or knee pain while biking, it's very possible the crank arms were just too large for you, so it's nice to see that Nakto took some actual consideration to comfort down to this level. The front brakes are the previously mentioned rim brakes, while the rear uses a simple drum brake, something I don't often see on bikes anymore. The drum brake does feel surprisingly smooth, and both brakes do a pretty good job of bringing the bike to a stop, considering the sub 20mph speeds this bike will likely be going. The rims themselves look very strong, and are held up by oversized 12-gauge spokes. They actually look like heavy-duty cargo bike rims to me, and are riding atop 26-inch name-brand Kenda tires. Once I did receive the proper basket, I found it to be much more sturdy than my own basket, with a matching lid that snaps on to make sure nothing bounces out. Well, with the bike fully assembled, it's time to get the battery charged and ready for its first ride. The bike packs a pretty typical 36-volt system, with a 12 amp-hour battery and 350-watt motor capable of 40 Nm of torque. The battery has a quick release and pulls out of the frame very easily, thanks in part to the tilting seat mechanism. So as I mentioned from the beginning, this bike is very easy to mount and is super comfortable. The step-through design makes it very easy to get on and off, with tons of room to spare, even if you happen to be carrying a bit of extra cargo. The bike also has plenty of power, and the 350-watt motor easily gets me up the steepest hills close to my house with very little effort. Top speed is around 20 miles an hour, which is very respectable. I often am overly positive in my reviews, so I let my wife give a few test rides, and this is what she had to say about the bike.
I hate it.
What? You hate it? Why? What's wrong with it?
The pedaling.
What don't you like about the pedaling?
It goes too fast.
Now, don't get me wrong, she actually ended up loving everything else about the bike, but the pedal assist on this bike is so absolutely horrible that it almost has no right being released like this. It slowly ramps up, but it just keeps on accelerating until you hit 20 miles an hour. This is fine if you just want to commute over long straights, but riding slow requires you to pedal for a bit, coast, and repeat. Luckily, I had a really super quick and easy fix for this. Just unplug the pedal sensor. Of course, you won't get automatic assistance while pedaling, but you can just manually use the throttle and adjust your speed while pedaling. This felt tons better, and my wife actually ended up riding it on multiple future trips, including a long trip on a gravel trail, which the bike handled wonderfully. This one simple fix completely changes the bike, turning it from a very weird feeling too fast bike to a relaxed cruiser with optional throttle to bump you up a hill or just ride home on throttle. After this, I found myself able to zone out and relax to check out some of the scenery on my rides, casually bumping the throttle if I needed a little bit of assist on a hill or into the wind. So one of the most asked questions about any e-bike is, what sort of range does it get? Well, this bike has a shockingly conservative factory estimate of 20 plus miles, and it easily gets that. The included battery is 432 watt-hours, and using the motor at its maximum rated 350 watts would get you 1.2 hours of runtime. At the maximum speed of around 20 miles an hour, this would get you 24 miles. Mind you, this is at maximum speed, and this bike could easily go double that range at 12 to 15 miles an hour. But even if you do run out of battery, it's easy enough to just pack a charger and pull the battery to take indoors with you for charging. So if there's one consistent thing about my channel over the years, it's that I can't leave anything well enough alone. So I decided to modify the bike by replacing the stock controller. I opted for this brain power unit off of Amazon, as it seemed to be a somewhat equivalent replacement. This wound up being quite an endeavor. Some of the connectors lined up, such as the throttle, motor wires, and hall sensor, but other accessories like the lights and brakes used custom connectors. I ordered a crimp kit for the proper connectors, but boy was this a pain. I really hope in the future Nakto updates all their old models with a better speed control, as this would basically fix all my complaints about the bike. On the other hand, the option of simply unplugging the pedal assist sensor does a pretty good job. Unfortunately, I didn't even need to make any modifications at all, as my mother-in-law preferred to ride the bike on throttle only and just cruise, which the stock setup does a perfectly good job of already. So all in all, would I recommend the Nakto Classic? I do think that this is a phenomenal bike for the price point. There's so many people that are out on the trails nowadays thanks to e-bikes, and it's a wonderful thing, but so many of them are just so expensive. And this is a really great bike at a very affordable price. And if you can work around the limitations, I think you'll definitely have a great time on it.